Good Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you all were able to get a snack and some caffeine, some water, and settle in. Very excited to see the crowd that we have. Very excited about that. So thanks for joining. You are in the last workshop of the day, and myself and my partner, facilitator, are in the way of cocktails, but I promise you it's great content, and you're going to have great conversation, and we're going to be high energy for you, and you're going to get a lot out of it. So my name is Allison Spira. I am the Vice President of Market Impact here at the March of Dimes. I know many of you, but many of you I do not. So I'm happy to spend some time with you later tonight and get to know you, and just thank you so much for your travels and for being here, for your commitment to the March of Dimes, for your great partnership with your local staff. It's so energizing for us at the national level to be here and see that energy with you and your local market team. So thank you. If you're on a board, if you're on a committee, if you're a chair, no matter what your role is, please go back and say thank you and deliver our thanks to the other individual volunteer members that you work with closely. Tell them we said hello and thank you, and please share all the good information that you're going to get over the next day and a half. Quickly, my role. My role is to work with Kelly Ernst, and we're really lucky she's here with us today. So Kelly, if you would just wave. Kelly Ernst is our Senior Vice President of Market Impact. And together, yeah, I agree. And together we work with the markets across the country and all of you as volunteer leaders, really in every capacity to help bring success and, most importantly, bring the mission to our moms and babies and all the families and the individuals that we serve. So you have selected to be in the recruitment pipeline building and connector meetings. That's a lot to accomplish in a small amount of time, but Darlene and I are going to do an excellent job, we promise. We're going to give you a little bit of a twofer. I'm going to start us off today, and we are going to talk a little bit about how do we bring new people into our pipeline as volunteers? What are some ways we can do that? What are some questions we can ask ourselves? And, whether you're on a board or a committee or a chair, how do we find the right people, put them in our pipeline early enough, and have those connector meetings to bring more and more individuals into the March of Dimes and expose them to our mission? Then we're going to transition, and Darlene is going to take the floor, and we're really going to talk about how do we do that in a diverse kind of way so that we're bringing diversity to our volunteer work and to our markets to even better penetrate our mission. Sound good? Okay, so just by a quick group of hands for our volunteers, how many of you sit on a board? Just so Darlene and I have a little bit of the audience that we're working with. Okay, board members, welcome. What about an event committee? Okay. Okay, and what about chair or leadership role? Doesn't matter if you're a board or if you're awesome, great, lovely to have you. Any of our MIH or mission volunteers with us today? Yay, okay, great. You did a beautiful job this morning, by the way. Okay, so let's get into this and let's talk a little bit about pipeline. So the sad reality is that we want a great full pipeline of prospects, but in reality, it's more like a slow drip so that it keeps filling up the bucket, filling up the sink, filling up the bathtub, if you will. And why is that? Well, it's really because building a pipeline that is really ideal, the kind of pipeline that we want, it really takes strategic work and it takes discipline. And just for a quick show of hands too, how many of you do this in your day-to-day work, whether it's in your corporations? So please jump in. You're certainly the expert, probably more than I am. So please jump in with some comments as we go through. So as we know, and as you're probably experiencing with your work in your communities, building and managing a robust pipeline can really seem like hard work. How many of you have a goal to bring more board members in, more committee members? Yeah. So probably all of us aren't thinking that our committees, our boards, our chair positions are where they need to be. They might be right now, maybe they are for 2023, but we're always looking ahead and building that pipeline. It's definitely not easy work, but it's very rewarding work. And if we're consistently disciplined and we put in that effort, we will definitely see the benefits. And the benefits can definitely be large for us. So why do we need a robust pipeline? Emphasis on the robust part. Does anyone know roughly maybe what the industry average is on the return of building a pipeline? So if you go 100% in, what percentage do we get back in return? Any guesses? And even if our staff may know because they went through this with me yesterday. Jamie, can you tell the group? 10 to 15%. That's right. So that's the industry average of all the potential leads and all the potential prospects. On average, only 10 to 15% of them become partners. So, we really work with our teams and I know, right? Like eyes just got big, like, oh, right? Deep breaths. So we really worked with our teams this week to get our heads around how are we building portfolios that are larger than that, knowing we're only going to get a 10 to 15% return. So what we're really looking to do is have a 4-to-1 pipeline. And so, or it's about a 25% return is what that is. But it's always best to be conservative, and having a robust pipeline can definitely help us meet our goals, which is, I know we're all on the same page with that. The benefits of a robust pipeline, it definitely creates a consistent approach to revenue generation. How many of you feel like either you're in a board meeting or you're working with your committee, maybe for March for Babies or special events, and it's like, okay, so who do we have lined up to sit on the committee? How close do we are in our revenue goals? And how many of you at times feel behind? Yeah. 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 What this will do, this work, this generation, this building the pipeline, and when you do it consistently and disciplined with your staff partners, it's going to create that consistent sort of wheel so that it doesn't feel so seasonal or transactional. More benefits, each prospect is assigned to specific stages. We went through that with our teams this week. I am hoping and expecting that they will come back and share a lot of that work with you. We're not going to go through it today, but they'll share that with you, because we move donors and we move corporations and we move individuals like yourself through a pipeline process, and they can fill you in on some of that. Also, the pipeline structure is directly related to business growth. And so the bigger pipeline we have, the more robust it is, the more qualified those individuals are in that pipeline, the more revenue we're going to raise, and the more we're going to impact our mission. And that's really the goal and what we need to keep our eye on. Companies who master pipeline management see 28% higher revenue growth than companies with insufficient pipeline management. So here's a really amazing opportunity for all of us to get that 28%. I know our staff was excited about it. I hope you will be excited about it. And if it's okay for me to say, we were one of those companies that needed to get more efficient in our pipeline management. We know that. Our leadership identified that. Our board of trustees at a national level identified that. And we are all very committed to it. So there's a great benefit of almost 30% for us to drive our revenue and hit our goals. Okay, so I do apologize. I have a couple more slides. And for those of you that just joined Andy's group before this, you're going to see two of them, but I might hit some points he didn't. So bear with me. So we just talked about qualifications. Not all leads are created equal. We know that. So we want to do a good job of making sure we take these leads through a process to know, are they worth our time? Are they worth our priority? Especially for you as volunteers. We want to make sure we protect and honor the time that you're giving. So we need to help you, and we need to talk to each other about they're qualified in 3 ways. So they're the 3 A's. Some of you in business, I know, will have known this. This is something we're training our teams around and using. We ask ourselves, and we should all ask ourselves, the following questions when attempting to determine whether there's a quality of a potential prospect and that we could keep working it. 1, does the individual company have the ability to give? 2, do we have access to this individual? So earlier in Andy's group, he made a good analogy. He said, almost all of us want Bill Gates, right? But do we have access to him? No. So is he probably the most qualified prospect to have in our pipeline? Maybe not at this moment. Maybe you do. And if so, let's chat. Does this individual company have affinity towards my organization? So quickly, let's go through a couple of these. So the ability is really to give. Do they have the resources to financially have the capacity to give to the March of Dimes? Is there a corporate executive or a business owner? What is their title? What is their role in the company? And does that organization and where they work have a history of giving? Do they fit that mold? They need to have the ability to be a qualified prospect for you to build that pipeline. Do we have access to them? I want you to know we did a lot of training with our teams this week on LinkedIn and in our own new CRM system to be able to get very savvy in working with all of you in how to find prospects, how to look for leads. So definitely pick their brain over dinner or when you get back home. It could be a great topic for a board meeting for us to go through and show you what someone's LinkedIn SSI is. Ask your staff what that means. But we really can take advantage of how do we have access to these people. But for you as volunteers, think about warm leads. Who are the family and friends? Who are coworkers? Do you serve together on a board or organization? Who has connectors? LinkedIn's definitely a tool. Our own CRM is a tool. What tools do you have? And who are you connected with? And where does all of that lead us to finding new prospects? And lastly, what is the affinity towards our organization? Why the March of Dimes? Well, first, what about their CSR, their corporate social responsibility? Are they interested in women's health, children's health, health equity, military service, etc.? So what is it that they're looking to do, and how do we match that, and how can they have an affinity towards us and us towards them? The second category is consumer brands. Maybe that they advertise to moms. That would be somebody that we have an affinity to and we would want to talk to. Has female target shopper, consumer, anything with the mom and baby type of area. And then certainly Fortune 500 to 1,000 companies with focuses on maternal health, benefits for employees that support women's health, standing up for racial injustice, health equity, and maybe a large number of women employees, or really a large number of employees overall. One of the many special things about the March of Dimes is in almost all cases, you will find someone in some way that connects to our mission. And so when you start to ask these questions and learn about affinity, we get stories, and they are great, great tools for you to be able to share, to recruit new donors, to recruit new board members, to recruit your next chair or the chair 2 years out, and to have those meetings and to build that pipeline. So I'm sure many of you have seen these three circles before. Andy has shown them. And basically the takeaway here as you look through is that middle, I'm going to use the pointer, very fancy. This middle space right here is really the sweet spot, and where we have all three of those: ability, affinity, and access, and they come together. That's really the sweetest, most qualified donors that we want to continue to put in our pipeline. So on your tables, I'd like to just give you a couple minutes. You have worksheets. Just take about maybe 5 minutes, because we're doing okay on time. And I want to make sure Darlene has enough time with all of you to talk about diversity recruitment as well. But this is a worksheet that talks about what is a prospect that you would like to see in your pipeline. Where do they work? What position or title do they have? How do they connect to the March of Dimes? And then maybe rate each of the A's. What is their ability rating? What is their affinity rating? And what is their access? And then total them up. This is a great worksheet that you could use in a board meeting, in a committee meeting, in a strategic planning meeting if you're looking ahead, just in conversation with your staff partner. So let's just take a couple of minutes and let's do one. We're not going to have time to share, so it's just an independent working exercise, but go ahead and put some brain power to that. Just about another minute or so, and we'll bring everybody back. So maybe start to wrap up your prospect sheet. Okay, how did it go? Did we get some good leads? So an exercise like this, along with maybe some work with your computers up on or your phones up on LinkedIn, our internal CRM pipelining tool that we have called Roy, you could really do some really great work around pipelining. Our teams and our staff are also working on building their pipelines. And so really hope that some of this content this morning was able to help you get thinking about it, getting you thinking bigger, just like your eyeballs were when I said 4 to 1. But that's a good thing because we need to think bigger, have more folks, meet more folks. As many people we can talk about the mission of the March of Dimes, we're doing the right thing and more will come in. So thank you for your attention for me. It is really my honor to introduce our Chief Diversity Officer, Darlene Slaughter. She's going to come up and lead us through integrating diversity, equity, and inclusion into your board culture and recruiting in a diverse way.
Good afternoon, everyone. Pardon me if I'm hopping around a little bit, so I'm going to try to stand still as best I can, but I actually like moving around and engaging in the conversation. And I actually have been at the March of Dimes now almost 4 years, not quite 4 years, and as the Chief Diversity Officer, really helping the staff to understand what diversity, equity, and inclusion is about. I've been in this space since 2008 in several organizations, Fannie Mae, United Way Worldwide, and another organization called Linkage, which taught leadership and diversity. So I've been doing this for a long time. So because I've been doing this for a long time, I always change the rules. I change the game plan. And because you have been in many meetings, not all of you, but many of you have been in many meetings and looking at a lot of PowerPoint slides for the day, we're going to really have you engage in conversation. Because one of the things that I think is most important, especially around this space around diversity, equity, and inclusion, is the conversation. And many times we don't get to have the conversation, or we don't have enough time to have the conversation. And so I think that's very important. And I also believe that you have just as much knowledge as I have in terms of what's working and what's not working. So we're actually going to have you engage with each other. We're going to ask you a couple of questions. You'll turn to each other, and then we'll have you do some report outs around that. We also have some special guests in the room who I've worked with and have had some successes around the diversity space and the health equity space. And so we're going to ask both of those guests to speak a little bit about their progress that they made, the process that they went through, and how they were successful in bringing board members on to the board and or raising the awareness of diversity and why it's important. Okay, so we're going to mix it up a little bit. I do have some slides. I'm not going to go through every slide, but I do have a couple of slides that I want to show you that really point out what we're working with right now. And so I can say for those of you who are board members, those of you who are EDs, right? And we talk about diversity, and we talk about diversity on the board. And as Allison talked about, how do you create that pipeline? We know that there's more than likely not enough diversity on the boards, right? Across the board. And that's not just in the nonprofit world, that's in the corporate world, in the government world, wherever a board is. We typically don't have enough diversity. And one of the reasons for that is, who are we going after? Like, how are we building that pipeline? Who are we talking to? Who are we bringing to the table? The other fact is that we are very comfortable as people, just as people. We are very comfortable with people who look like us. And we go to people who look like us. And in our networks, mostly are people who look like us, right? So if we're going to our networks to bring in board members, guess what? They probably look like us. So if I'm going out to say I need people to join my board, I might have a tendency to have more people of color, more Black women, more Black men on my board, because that's somebody that's in my current network. And I have to do a little bit more to go past that to say I can't have a board that only has people of color, because I too then will have a diversity problem, right? And so that's one of the things that actually happens. So it's no negative intention about how we're building the boards. It's just that we're comfortable going to the people we know, and we go to the people that we think are going to say yes, right? So two things kind of happen. We go to the people that we believe will say yes, and we go to the people who we believe can bring dollars into the organization. And then many times, and especially like on the corporate board and even our nonprofit boards, we go to people who might be more senior in the organization, because we know a corporation, their dollars there. But who sits at the top of those corporations, right? And so again, while we can bring in people who have a lot, who can bring a lot, who have a lot of connections, who have a lot of access, all of a sudden when we take a look, we don't have a lot of differences on our boards, and we're not creating spaces for differences to come in and feel like they belong on the board. And so that's really what a lot of this work that we're doing. So in addition to the work that I am responsible for in helping our organization, internal organization, understand it, Dr. Spencer and I, who is a partner with me, and she's sitting over here, we also are working to help the boards understand how to become more diversified, and what that looks like, and where should you look, and how should you engage with different organizations. Sometimes the boards have a lot of health professionals on the board, and that too is all from a same group of people, where we're saying, well, maybe you should talk to people who are lawyers, and maybe you should talk to people who are engineers, and maybe you should talk to people who are teachers, because all of them have a different perspective to bring on the board, and they all have different groups and different access that they could bring to the board, right? So I always tell people, like, if you think that I'm not the right person to be on the board, because you might look at me, and interesting enough, it takes 7 seconds for someone to make a decision about you. So the minute I walk in a room, someone makes a decision about who they think I am, what they think I'm capable of doing, how much access they think I have, who I know. But what you don't know is who's behind me. So while I might not have all that you're asking for, I have that uncle or that grandma or that mom who I can convince to leave a legacy gift to the March of Dimes, because I work for the March of Dimes, right? So those are the kinds of things that you have to think about when you're building that pipeline, when you're connecting into people and into places that you're not most comfortable with. You have to go beyond that. So I'm gonna, question? No. All right. So I think this is a movie, and I want to show this. This is a little clip, and it's called Blind Spots. And let's hope this works. And it didn't. So,
Are you seriously considering her as a candidate?
Just don't trust her.
She's a woman.
She's a
This is a
woman.
man's
He's
job.
clearly not educated.
Really not. Does she even speak English?
That's not me. I'm not like that. You call it an honest mistake. Science calls it a blind spot. Our unconscious mind is a mysterious and powerful thing. It makes 90% of our decisions without us even knowing it. Our brains are overloaded with 11 million pieces of information every second. Yet we can only process about 40 of them. So we're wired to make cognitive shortcuts, using past experiences to make assumptions. And you know what happens when we assume? Our unconscious mind can put us on autopilot, determining where we sit, who we eat lunch with, who we turn to for advice, and who we choose to offer a helping hand. Living our lives with blind spots can put us in a tunnel. Same point of view, same decisions, same outcomes. We can find ourselves trapped in the land of snap judgments and misconceptions. We've all been on both the giving and receiving end of blind spots. Think about it. Who's talented? Who's able? Who can I trust? Who belongs? We've all been there. Blind spots are part of the human condition. Our choices have consequences for us and the people we interact with. By accepting that blind spots exist, we can stop. Imagine what what possibilities exist if we could do it all over again. Different perspectives, inclusive relationships, diverse networks, better outcomes, seeing people for who they really are. People like you with unlimited potential. We all have blind spots. Once you accept that you have them, you can choose to do something about it. It's time to check your blind spots and focus on what's possible.
You've seen it. You used to work for PwC. PwC has done some great work around diversity and equity. So I have a question. What are your blind spots? Think about your boards. Think about your volunteers. And I'm going to come around the room because, again, this is going to be an interactive conversation. What are some of the blind spots that you have as you sit right now thinking about that video? What are some of your own blind spots that you see happening? And you'll probably say, well, I don't know, because they're blind spots. I haven't paid attention to them, right? But you do. Just think up for a second. What are some of the blind spots that you have? So think about, not even if you're thinking about your board, think about the team you work with. Think about the people you talk to at work. Think about how you engage. Think about donors, who you're asking to be a part of something. What are the blind spots that you have? And this is when you all will talk. To me. So who's raising their hand? Who's willing? Yes.
I think sometimes just based on limited information, we make up the decision for the person before we even ask the question.
Okay, we make the decision for the person before we ask the question. Yes, that's a blind spot. Yes.
This fits well. It's the people who don't participate because you think they're not interested.
So the people who don't participate, we assume that they're not interested. So we don't even engage them, right? So we make that assumption. That's perfect. Yes.
So I could be honest and say that one of my spots is age. I tend to gravitate towards people who are my age, and particularly when I'm thinking of work and the development of a board or development of a governing body. I'm thinking age, but I'm starting to realize that blind spot, realizing these young people are going to be able to make the world move a little bit faster for us and get things done. So that is an age spot for me, is the age.
Yes. Age is a big one, and that's a big topic right now, right? Because the young people know how to make QR codes. I don't.
So I think that a blind spot can also be making assumptions because someone's quiet, right? We're often, not everybody is loud, is outspoken, but they might be super impactful or have that uncle or whatever it might be, just because even if they're on your board and they're not being, when you're calling out for things, making a statement, maybe they're not comfortable with that, right? So I think sometimes we tend to, at board level, tend to gravitate towards the people who are more outspoken, more communicative, when there might be some amazing ideas. If we got in a one-on-one with some of those more quiet folks that tend to sit back and become wallflowers.
Yes, that's perfect. So the introvert versus the extrovert, that person that doesn't necessarily speak up and is inward thinking, and usually when they say something, everybody listens because they very rarely say anything, versus the person who thinks out loud, who's always talking, and the first thought that comes to them is not the thought you should jump on, because by the time they get to the end, they will say like, well, I didn't say that's what I wanted to do, and and everybody's off on the wrong track. So anybody else? Yes.
We're in West Texas, and I think we probably serve one of the largest land masses. So geography is really big for us, and so sometimes you just don't see someone all the time. We're hubbed out of Lubbock, but if you kind of drove our geography, it'd probably take you 10 hours to get around it. And so individuals may not just be physically present, right?
They're not present, and now that we have Zoom and we are living in a Zoom world, everybody can be present, right? So that's a blind spot for us. And some other blind spots that we may have are, someone said, I'm not able to do it right now. for whatever reason, right? I'm not able to do it right now. And we never go back to that person. And that person couldn't do it last year, but it doesn't mean they won't do it this year for whatever reason. And we just write that person off. And so that becomes a blind spot of how many people have said no to us that we just take off the list altogether, who are actually very interested, but we didn't continue to work with them to see if that next year or the year after is a better time for them than now. So all of those things are blind spots, and they make a difference into how we think about the pipeline and how we bring board members on. So we have a person back here. I'm gonna hop back here. Hold on.
I was going to say, for board members, one of the blind spots that I've seen, and we've changed a lot in Atlanta, is that our blind spot was that the person always had to be some senior level executive. And I will tell you that not only the youth, but also someone that's not very senior in a corporation are actually our two largest board individual donors right now. And so I think that old way of looking at someone has to be at a certain level in the organization that you never gave them a shot.
Yes, yes. I can tell you, I have a nephew. He is, I don't think he's 30 yet. I don't think he's 30. And he makes like $150,000 a year salary, and he's not 30 yet, right? So think about those in the tech world, the people in the tech world, the amount of money that people are making, the creativity that young people bring to the board, the energy that young people bring to the board. And we were talking about that a little bit earlier, that the mission of what March of Dimes is doing, young people love it. I bring in a lot of interns, and they're just fascinated about the work that we do and excited to be there. So that, again, not every young person is making that kind of money, but how do you make room for people to feel like they belong, right? And there are ways to make room for people to feel like they belong. So we keep going. Let's see. Do I stand? All right, let's see, this way. All right, I'm gonna page through a lot of these slides, and hopefully we can get these for you so that you don't have to take notes and everything. We can make sure that you get these for you. But this is some data that goes a long way. 87% of nonprofit chief executives are white. 78% of nonprofit board members are white. 19% of nonprofit boards are entirely white, right? And 71% of board chairs say that they don't have the demographics, and they know that diversity is important, but when you look at it, only 26% of boards place a high priority on diversity. And so one of the things that Dr. Spencer and I are doing, and one of the things that we actually did today, we made little videos that we're going to be sending out on a monthly basis to you to keep that conversation going. Because again, it's not about the PowerPoint slide, it really is about the conversation. And is this something that's on your agenda? Is it a topic on your agenda, or is it the first topic on the agenda, or is it the last topic on the agenda, right? And many times it becomes the last topic on the agenda, and everybody has to hurry up and get out of the board meeting because people have to go and do what they need to do. And you have to be very conscious about that. You have to be very intentional about that it needs to be the first part of the conversation. And you need not be afraid of the conversation, because they're not easy conversations, right? But you have to have them. And unless you do that, the numbers don't actually change. So I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to have you turn, and then after I have you turn to each other, I'm going to actually bring up a couple of guests. So I want you to turn to your tables, and I want you to talk about what you think the obstacles are, the challenges, and then what are the opportunities for you, right? So it's a mixture of people at the table. Just talk to each other about what your challenges are when you think about making a board diverse. And when I say diversity, I'm not just talking about race, right? I'm not just talking about race. I'm talking about the spectrum of diversity. So you can have people who are veterans. You can have people who have disabilities. You can have people who are young. You can have people who have religious differences, right? All of those aspects are diverse. So when you think about your boards that you're currently on, or the boards that you've seen, what are the challenges to that? And what are the opportunities? So just talk among yourselves. We'll give you a few minutes to do that. And then we'll have each of the tables kind of report out some aha moments. Okay? You have about another minute before we wrap up. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to start in the back. Allison, let's start in the back. Okay, so what are some of the opportunities? Everybody's still talking. You know, it's a good conversation when people won't stop talking. Okay, so Allison is in the back. What are some of the opportunities and challenges from that table? What did you talk about?
Well, we were talking, that's right. We were talking about access. Access is an issue. So sometimes you don't have access to the type of people that you want to recruit on your board. and it may seem disingenuous to go after them specifically. You feel that way. That may not be true. So we talked about other opportunities. I was going to bring up one. We didn't have time, but when you said put something in the beginning of the meeting, if you do a board matrix analysis and you keep pushing, this is where we're lacking, that is an opportunity for your board to improve.
So access. Thank you. Thank you. That's great. You should be writing these down. What's in the next table? An opportunity and or challenge.
Hi, Shannon. Can I take this down? Shannon Wilson from our Detroit market, Michigan. Sorry, Michigan market. We actually think we do a pretty good job with racial and ethnic board diversity. But one of the things we were talking about, particularly from a blind spot standpoint, is really making sure that we have the voice of more of our community at the table. And so how do we get like a community advisory group or something like that so that we're not missing certain perspectives?
Yes, that's excellent. Excellent. Bringing the community into the board. Yes. What about this table over here?
I've been elected the spokesperson. So one of the areas that both Atlanta and San Antonio is lacking is diversity in industries, and making sure that we are getting all of the different industries that are key stakeholders in San Antonio, but using our current board members to really look at that board matrix and who their contacts are to dive into those different industries.
So you have industries where you are.
We do.
Okay.
But really not hitting. So for example, San Antonio, we don't have anybody from the construction industry on our board, but that is one of the major key players in San Antonio's construction.
Okay. Okay. So getting access to that area. That's great. Thank you. Next table.
So our board has been all bankers, and because that's where the money was, so they thought, right?
Oh, all bankers.
Yeah.
All bankers.
So
okay.
So we've made a conscious effort that we want to diversify the board, and we do want to do industry because it has been all bankers. It's been who do you know? Just bring them onto the board. But because we've made this commitment to truly diversify, we're going to actually go after the diverse chambers of commerce.
Yes.
So there's the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
There's, even the junior league, so we can get some younger people, the Black women of business, that type of thing. And we don't want to just go out and have token people on the board just
Correct.
because. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually have that commitment and have it be a pipeline, but have it also be a leadership grooming opportunity.
Yes.
Where people can either come into a committee or an event ELT, and if it's good fit, then we'll move them into the board.
Yes.
We also have picked out some businesses that are already major donors to us, but we don't have a relationship outside of that. So again, how might we get a seat for Dell? So Dell Computers, big, they
Yes.
do over 100,000 a year for us. But how could we get a board seat that it's an opportunity of recognition for someone, or it's a grooming opportunity, and have it be a permanent seat where they might rotate somebody every 3
Yes.
years through it?
Yes.
And again, working with them on their diversity, equity, and inclusion, because everybody's doing it, right? Everybody's
Right.
trying. And so how do we hook into that and partner together on it?
Yes, that's excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And I would say, we have at the March of Dimes, we have employee resource groups, which are made up of affinity groups. And many of the corporations have the same thing, right? They have affinity groups. And so I say partner with the corporations that are supporting you to create those board opportunities, because people, and especially people of color, are not asked to be on boards for a variety of reasons, right? And when you're working in a corporation, that signals to the leaders and that you're ready to go to a higher level from a leadership. So having the ability to be on a board, a volunteer board, that you're in partnership with the organization to help build those leadership skills is priceless. It's priceless.
It's an individual. We're meeting with them in the next week or so, that their whole purpose is to help people of color get on boards.
Yes.
And so if you haven't looked into whether or not there's any organization like that within your area, I would suggest you do that as well.
Yes.
I don't know what'll come of it. It's one person, but
Yes.
that's what their mission and their commitment is. So hopefully we can do something together.
They're different ones. I know a big national organization is called ELC, which is the Executive Leadership Council. They actually work with their members to get them on corporate boards, but they would also accept volunteer boards as well. So there are a lot of organizations that actually prepare people to be on boards. Now the other side of that I would say is, while people are being prepared to be on boards, we also need to prepare the board members to accept people who are coming onto boards. I've been on boards where the conversation was the person just didn't work out. It just didn't seem a good fit. You know, we took them through a year-long program, but they couldn't really come in and integrate into the board. And I said, how much training did you give the board to accept the person? And it was like this light bulb went off, and it was like, none. And I said, okay, so you put all the onus on the person of color coming on the board to make that relationship successful, and none on the people who are already sitting on the board to support that person so that that person would be successful. So that becomes very important. So thank you. Yes. Yes. For that, yes. Thank you. This
We
table.
just sort of brainstormed a bit. Darrell here told me about his organization, recommended that I go on his website and I could use his name when recruiting. So that's one of the takeaways here. And then when you said veterans, I mean, we're in Omaha. We have Offutt Air Force Base. Was there 30,000 people that are on that base? And no one's ever thought of that before? Hello. So anyway, so we were just started a list of things that we could do to diversify, and love the Offutt Air Force suggestion. And then also those that handicapped individuals. I mean, what a great way to not only be diversified, but, you know, thank you. Yes, just their perspective on things would be so welcomed. So
yes, thank you. So people with disabilities bring a lot of insight that, you know, and because there's a lived experience that they have, and there are lots of different disabilities. We have disabilities in this room. Some we can see, some we can't see, but you can be very intentional about going for organizations. And there are organizations out there that will support you finding people with disabilities to be able to be on your board. So thank you. All right, this table. Everybody's looking around.
Hi, everyone. So we talked a lot about different aspects such as geography and making sure that we're representing the geography that we cover, who our clients and our partners are and our donors. And we talked about kind of something you touched on, Darlene, of who our networks are as a board, and continuously being in a cycle of asking those networks, not just for board, but for March for Babies, for special events, that we're going back to the same networks over and over and over again. So just trying to diversify for those networks and the different networks to expand just between not having one person, but having their whole network as well.
Yes, thank you. Great. Yes.
This is just helpful. Last session, I was sitting next to a gentleman out of Philly, a construction organization that has an office in San Antonio. So I don't think he's in this room. I think he's in the other room, but find the group from Philly, okay?
So
All right.
that clap, because that's how it works. Yes. And not final table, but
not the final.
I think we have one more. Okay.
Well, isn't it funny that the same issues and opportunities we have in Dallas, Fort Worth? So one of the things we talked about is we looked at the ethnicity breakout of our group, and we thought, yeah, it's pretty fair. It represents the community. But we don't have veterans, we don't have young people, we don't have disability. And there's no excuse in Dallas, Fort Worth. We have many, many industries, and we just now have to tap them.
Yes.
We've also had a high turnover. So we're rebuilding the board. And with the high turnover of staff, they have relationships with those specific board members
Yes.
or other volunteers. And so we just have to do a reset.
Yes, during the reset. Yes, thank you. And over here, Final.
So I represent the Greater Philadelphia, South Jersey region, and we've gone through those matrix exercises a lot in the last year. And we do have that diversity with geography, with industry, but we definitely do not have that as it relates to race or ethnicity. So like you just mentioned, we just talked about this at our last board meeting, identifying those chambers and those business associations and all those organizations that would give us that opportunity to connect with our diverse communities and the ones that our mission is representing. So what we talked about was bringing accountability to every board member by assigning them one of those organizations to follow up with or attend an event or make some contact with so that we can start that relationship and make those inroads, but assign that to a board member for the accountability and for the follow-up. So it's a challenge for us right now with the diversity of our board, but we see this as a big opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to call on. So that was great. So everybody, if you didn't hear, you didn't write something down, shame on you, right? Because there was a lot of good suggestions in here. But I'm going to call on one of our board members to stand up and speak a little bit about what happened on his board and the outcome of what happened on your board.
Thanks, Darlene. So for us, we've had the matrix we've used for any number of years, and in our annual board retreat this year, we refreshed it. And I think one of the holes we really saw in doing that was around the community we serve, those who benefit from the services. You know, we did a good job actually of representing the industries and the community at large, the broader community, and the providers who, you know, we work with, but not the recipients of the services. And so, oh, okay, better now, huh? Okay. And anyway, like I say, we didn't do a good job of representing the recipients of the services. So we did talk in the board meeting about, well, one, making sure we renewed our list of who our candidates should be and thinking about it from that standpoint. But beyond that, thinking about really the qualifications and what we were willing to, you know, look for candidates. And one of the things we kind of focused on as much as anything might be focusing maybe on 2 of the 3 A's, if you will, more than anything else, right? We certainly focused on affinity first and access. And we looked for, you know, the ability to kind of meet the give and get kind of over time as opposed to something that might be done immediately. You know, people who are up and coming and those had those kind of characteristics as opposed to someone who had a lot of board experience or, you know, came from a high level position within an organization. So we certainly looked beyond kind of what might be the norm from that standpoint. And so we did target a couple of individuals, one who worked with one of the national service partnerships, so was Ada, and had been very supportive of March for Babies, and another who had been a mission family and actually worked for Center for Equity and Inclusion. And so that was a good skill set to bring into the board as well. So we targeted those individuals, met with them. One of the things we did too is we also invited them to a board meeting. Fortunately, we had Darlene here and Dr. Spencer. So, and they presented a little bit about where the March of Dimes was going with all of this, and I think that was helpful. And then, you know, ultimately, we've just heard that they're both interested, so we'll be moving forward with them as board members. Yeah, they accepted.
I'm not gonna take credit for that, but you know, it was good. But it was good timing. It was good timing because you know why? Because people want to see people who look like them, right? So when there is diversity on the board, when potential board members know that the organization is focused on this, not just externally, but also internal, that makes people say, I want to be a part of that because I see people who look like me. And that's why when you look at some of this data back here, it's like people, it's important to have diversity, not just that person who you're saying, well, you're the token person on the board, but I'm on your board because I bring a perspective and a lived experience, and other people will see that I'm on the board and will also want to say, I want to be on the board with you. So yes.
I do want to add, yes, you should take credit along with Dr. Spencer because you came to, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Back there?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, it's very strange with the mask. But yes, please, you started that conversation with the board. That was significant in these two individuals in particular feeling very comfortable saying yes. And so I would just say, if you haven't had the opportunity to have Darlene and Dr. Spencer come to your board meetings, it's phenomenal to have that conversation, particularly when you're developing your pipeline for growth. It gets a conversation started, and it just gets it started. It has to continue.
Yes.
But thank you so
Yes,
much for
thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you. Yes. So I have another guest that I want to share, and this is Dr. Craig Best. And I said, I have a best friend, and his name is Dr. Best. And I met Dr. Best, about a year ago, year and a half ago. Well, almost 2 years ago now. It's been about 2 years. It's a little bit about 2 years. Actually, Dr. Best brought me in to talk to friends of his, friends and colleagues, about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I just want to give him a little bit of time to talk about how that experience was.
Yes, thank you, Darlene. I'm going to take this off because it's annoying me, and maybe I can speak a little bit better. But yes, we decided to have what we call a salon event. I don't know if any of you've done anything like that, but it was a time when we were in the middle of COVID and we couldn't, have face-to-face meetings. And so this was going to be a virtual event, and we really needed to basically just raise some money, and we were struggling. So so I was asked if I would host something. I said sure. And I think that one of the main draws to this was that we were really focusing on the health inequities piece. And one of the things that I've discovered over the last couple of years as the March of Dimes focus has shifted is that number one, is an OBGYN, I do believe that a lot of the issues that we face with respect to healthy moms and healthy babies has to do with health inequities. And many of my friends are very sympathetic to that. So, and my family. So I invited, I made a list. It was a fairly long list, and I invited everyone I knew that cared about health inequities, number one, and had money, and might want to donate. And I wasn't, shy about it at all. And we invited Darlene to give a presentation on basically on bias and on inequities. I gave a little talk on some of the maternal and neonatal statistics around health inequities. And I invited people to come with a cocktail, come after dinner. We're going to give a presentation, and we're going to just not be shy about asking them to donate to the March of Dimes. And Darlene absolutely killed it. Her presentation was awesome. And everyone was really touched, and afterwards, we asked people to donate, and I followed up with them. I had my parents there, I had my brother, his wife, I had some good friends. It was a very diverse crowd, and we set some goals for that evening. We raised more than we thought we would possibly raise. And again, I think that the take home for me was with respect to fundraising, you really have to believe in the mission. You have to be a little bit creative, particularly during times of COVID, dive right in, use the resources that we have. Darlene is absolutely an expert on this topic and presents it in a way that's very compelling. And then ask people to give. One of the I've been listening. I'm going to veer off a little bit for just a second because I'm listening to the conversation that's going on, and it was very interesting about diversifying boards, and I was part of an organization that had a very undiverse board, and we completely changed it. And one of the ways we change it is by having some healthy turnover. You may have some people on your board that are not participating, and that provides an opportunity to bring other individuals on. But you have to be very, very deliberate about diversification. So if you have members of your board, like you said, bring Darlene in. You have to make it a goal that you're going to have diversity on your board. And at our last board meeting, had a conversation with one of our physicians who's a Black female, and I said, I'd like to get a Black neonatologist. She's an OBGYN. I want to get a Black neonatologist. So I called over to and actually sent an email to one of the, I'm a physician and I'm a leader. So I knew one of the department chairs at one of our hospitals that is focused on the underserved. And I said, can you send me, the names of several Black physicians? I knew they were there, and we're going to interview them. We're going to bring them on the board. So you have to be, in some cases, just very deliberate. And so you have the opportunity then to sort out who's really inspired to come on. But I think you have to be incredibly deliberate when you're doing this.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So those are real life examples. So it works, right? It works. And so if it's not in your network, it's in someone's network. And you just like we made the connection right here, right? So you don't know who knows whom. And so you have to talk about what you want. So I'm going to give Dr. Spencer a little bit of time to talk since she is my partner here. And we've been doing some really cool stuff around board development. So Dr. Spencer.
Thank you. Thank you, Darlene. I'm going to be quick, fast, because I don't have much time. And I'm one of those problem solvers. When I come in, I'm a fixer. That's what I do. So you might want to write some of this stuff down. Anybody know Melinda Gates? Raise your hand. Do you know Melinda Gates? She been to your house? Visited? Okay. Melinda Gates, when she decided to give away some of her money, first place she gave it away to was HBCUs. If you know what a HBCU is, raise your hand. If you don't, raise your hand. An HBCU is a historically Black college or university. They are located in most of your state, cities, and towns. She gave just to one of the schools in my area. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. She gave $45 million to North Carolina A&T State University. She decided that she was going to give her money away to organizations who, one, needed, two, show diversity, even though they are an HBCU. When you sit and you talk about trying to find board diversity and trying to find folks that are diverse, I'm going to use an example. Right here at this table, this beautiful woman with these gorgeous eyes. I'm with Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. We raised $1 million for March of Dimes last year. We do that. Zeta Phi Beta Sorority has 7,500 members in their national convention last week. Some of you may have seen us in the airport, blue and white everywhere. This young lady right here is the ED of Philadelphia, correct? I asked her how many Zetas does she have on her board. She said 0. I advise you to Google Zeta Phi Beta sorority for your area. We are in all 50 states and outside. One of the young ladies that we got is a Zeta. The next thing, I wrote all this stuff down when we were going around through the tables. Top ladies of distinction, raise your hand. This organization is another national organization that has members all over the country. They raise a lot of money for March of Dimes. Look up or ask her to tell you top ladies of distinction. I'm quite sure they'd love to sit on your board. Anybody that loves to raise money for you more than likely would love to sit on your board. A voice in the community. Someone said a voice in the community. In order for you to find out and what the voice in the community wants is you have to go out into the community and find out. You have to actually come out of that ivory tower and you have to go into the community. And the way you go into the community is you go in giving. You don't go in hand out. You go in hand in. Come up with something. Come up. I love the idea that he came up with, that Dr. Best came up with. They went into the community with an idea. Go in the community. When's the last time you threw a baby shower? When is the last time you went into your community? You got military bases. When was the last time you had a military baby shower on a military base? Can you imagine? Can you just imagine? And then when you said, how many people do we have on our board that's disabled veterans? DAV, Disabled American Veterans Association, the largest of disabled American Veterans Association in the country. And let me give you a hint. Disabled American veterans, they get a check every month, big money, and it's not taxed. It's all tax-free because it's owed to them for serving our country. And they love giving back. And the DAVA, which is the Disabled American Veterans Association Auxiliary, are the wives. They love giving back even more. Who does not like spending their husband's money? Raise your hand if you don't like it, because I love it. I don't like disappointing my husband. I try to do it every chance I get. I haven't been able to shop in Phoenix yet, but I will before I leave. Your Chamber of Commerce, everyone should be a member of your Chamber of Commerce, not go visit. You should have a membership. You should have a membership to your Chamber of Commerce, because what they're going to do every month in the Chamber newsletter, they're going to send you all the new businesses that have been and have decided to move to your area, who's going to be breaking ground. That means that they've got some tax credits. That means they've got some money. They want to be good corporate citizens. You want to be that nonprofit in the door first. In order to do that, you join your Chamber of Commerce. I heard another something else, that networks. New networks bring in new money. When you keep going to the same well, what happens? You end up having to dig a new well. New networks bring in new money. So that means folks that don't look like you and I, they're going to bring you new money. And if you keep going to the same well over and over and over again, that well eventually is going to dry up. And you have a network in every city, town, state, everywhere you go, you have the same list of philanthropists that everybody hits. They hit that same list. So you want to develop that new list. And that new list are those new young folk that are coming out. Because when George Floyd hit, it was everybody fighting for that fight. It wasn't just Black people. It wasn't just white people. It was everybody. So this is a group that's growing up with the everybody matters. and they love being able to help. So you would be amazed at how many of them have parents who have nice big checkbooks, and you've got my child that's interested in something like that, then yeah, I'm going to write a check. Not a problem. We'll leave property in our will. Not a problem. You've got our child that's thinking this way. Oh, we want to give back. So those are just a few little things that came off my head as you went around the room on the table. And one thing that I am going to give Darlene credit for, there's something else really quickly, and it's so hard for me to say really quickly on anything, but how many know what the ACC is? How many know what the call out a athletic association, the Big South? How many know what the Big South is? The SEC. There you go. That's what I wanted to hear. The CIAA, Central Intercollegiate Athletic Association. Guess what? This woman, and I tagged along with her, we got an MOU together, and we are now a part of the CIAA. The CIAA is comprised of how many HBCUs? 45. That's 45 historically Black colleges and universities. And these schools play on ESPNU. These schools have professors, they have teachers, they have administrators, they have alumni, big money donors. And I bet you there's a CIAA school in your town or in your city. And that's just one athletic association. We're going after all of them. So we're going to make a group and a list for you to help you. But again, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to give you some gold nuggets. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Spencer. That was great. So we are at time, and we want to make sure that you get to the receptions on time. But in this presentation, and what we'll send out to you as well, are some more questions, but there are a lot of links that you can go to. We're also working on a toolkit that will go out to the boards, that we'll send out to the boards. And in that toolkit, there is a QR code that we actually had our interns create a list of professional organizations across the United States. And so one of the goals that we've given to the EDs is that they should be reaching out to at least 2 of those organizations just to start the conversation, because that's, again, I'll end it like I started. It starts with the conversation. There are lots of tools that we have for you. I'm at the March of Dimes, easy to find. Most people know who I am, but instead of, not going to go through all the rest of the slides, because I think Dr. Spencer nailed it in terms of what was on the rest of the slides. But we want you to know that we're here to help you, and that this is a process, this is a journey. This is not a one and done. You're not going to have one conversation and it's going to work. You have to have lots of conversations. So whenever you need support and help, we're here to give you those tools, to have those conversations with you, and to open up our networks to you as well. So Dr. Spencer is a wealth of information. She knows the mayors and the commissioners of all across the United States, and part of her sorority. There are a lot of high-powered people that you can actually tap into to be on those boards. So with that, I just want to say thank you, and looking forward to working with all of you in the near future. Thank you.